Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Water Online Show, powered by Water Online, the leading online destination for the water and wastewater market. I am joined, as always, by my colleague and true friend, Mr. Worldwide, chief editor here at Water Online, Kevin Westerling. Kevin, we are back, baby.
Yes, we are.
And we are tackling a subject that you and I have covered somewhat this year so far, but we definitely tried to tackle a lot of it last year. But man, the news just keeps on coming when it comes to this specific topic. So, as it relates to what we're going to be talking about today, and as utilities around the world race to modernize their infrastructure, advanced metering infrastructure, better known as, everybody should know these three letters, AMI, has become one of the most talked about investments in the water sector. But while adoption is accelerating, success is far from guaranteed, as with most things. Too often, the conversation stops at installation, getting meters in the ground, networks up and running. But the reality is, that's really just the beginning. The value of AMI lies in what happens next, how utilities integrate, how they interpret, how they act on the data that they're collecting every single day. Today, we're going to dive into insights from the SWAN Smart Metering Playbook, which draws on global perspectives from more than 20 countries to be better understood what separates successful AMI programs from those that sometimes might fall short. We're going to explore where utilities often misjudge their own maturity, what success really looks like after a few years of post-deployment, and the risks of leaving valuable data untapped. We'll also unpack the balance between technology and organizational change, highlight global trends in smart metering adoption, and of course, look ahead to how AI, predictive analytics, and digital twins will shape the future of AMI.
It's a lot of stuff.
Man, oh man, I can't believe I did that all with one breath. I didn't even take a breath as I was going through all of that. But here to tell us more are a couple of knowledge experts. They know this topic inside and out, and I'm excited to share what they know, what they've learned as they put together the Global Smart Metering Playbook. Again, brought to you by SWAN. We have none other than Shirley Ben-Dak and Richard Relyea. Welcome to the Water Online Show, you two.
Hello.
Thank you.
Good to be here. What an intro.
Well, I'd like to start at the beginning because that's usually the best place to start, and it keeps it simple for me. And every time you can keep it simple for me, the better this is all going to go. So let's start there. Shirley, let's talk about the Global Smart Metering Playbook from SWAN, the SWAN Forum, and let's use that as a foundation to kick off the conversation. What can you tell us about its origins, why it was developed? What went into putting it all together? Can you give us some fine notes about what the Global Smart Metering Playbook is all about and where it came from and where it's going to go from here?
Sure. First of all, thanks so much, guys, for having me. It's always a pleasure to connect with great friends in the water sector. And this topic, like you said with that intro, Travis, is just front of mind for so many people, whether they're water utility representatives, metering providers, engineering firms, consultants. So really, that's kind of what led to this. There was so much talk about this, so many misconceptions, misunderstandings, different scattered resources across smart metering, AMR and AMI. And the goal with this is through SWAN, the Smart Water Networks Forum, which is really this kind of unbiased global organization that tries to make sense of digital transformation for the municipal water sector. We decided to come in and really leverage a lot of the insights from our kind of global smart metering experts that we have around the world, including Richard and many colleagues at GHD that really supported this project as a co-PI. We essentially teamed up with the Water Research Foundation, which became the project sponsor, and suggested that through collaboration that SWAN helps to facilitate, we can actually make sense of smart metering in the form of a kind of a guiding playbook. Really think about this as a compass, really helping water utilities first and foremost, but all that kind of supporting ecosystem of partners along the way, right, through that smart metering journey. The what, the why, the how behind this kind of project. And so that's really the foundations. It's leveraging the smart metering experts that SWAN has already kind of helped to formulate through our communities of practice and work groups, and really kind of pitched Water Research Foundation that this would be a really great proposal, that together we can kind of form this kind of impactful and actionable research. So that's just a little bit of the context. And it, I can kind of dive in more, but it really was a kind of an 18-month journey that we went on with the Water Research Foundation, with GHD, and about 80 global organizations were involved in this in over 20 countries, as you mentioned. So it's really not an isolated undertaking, but really kind of this collective effort to make more sense of smart metering and kind of demystify this space a bit more.
Kev, two things before we dive into the questions. The first one is, over the past 2 years that you and I have been doing, this is season 3 of the Water Online Show. In the first 2 seasons, I know that we've had a lot of questions come up about this particular topic in general. And there was really no centralized location that we could point anybody to for answers. So if I'm taking what Shirley's saying and being able to translate it into terms that I can understand, usually being the slowest guy in the room, I'm trying to figure out here how this is anything but a sort of like a game changer here. We finally have a one-stop shop for some of the answers that almost every utility, at least in the United States, but I think globally as well, that trend continues, are going through some form of digital transformation. It's just a question of where are they in that journey.
Yeah, and we're about to speak to that momentarily, but just off the top, yeah, I've been through it. It's a great resource that readers should get familiar with. We'll definitely link to it on this page in this description. And so Shirley referenced misconceptions. You just talked about different stages of the journey. So just as a table setter for Richard or Shirley, the playbook emphasizes that utilities are at very different stages of AMI maturity, right? It's all over the map. So, but what's the biggest misconception utilities still have about where they should be in that journey? I mean, I feel like a lot of them are probably a little insecure maybe about where they stand versus others, but should they feel that way?
No.
Richard, do you want to start this off? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question to kick these things off. So the biggest misconception that I see, and in the playbook as well, and the playbook really digs into this, is that utilities tend to look at other utilities and that have fully deployed AMI and think, oh, we're behind, we're failing, we have to catch up. And they feel like there's a finish line they haven't crossed yet. But the reality is that the journey is deeply contextual. That's right. What's right for a large metro utility in the Pacific Northwest is completely different from, what's right for a mid-sized utility in rural Texas or a smaller system in South Africa. The playbook actually maps out 4 distinct stages. You have explorers, you have intermediate adopters, you have advanced adopters, and you have optimizers. And one of the critical insights is that being an explorer isn't a deficiency. It means you're building your foundation correctly. And rushing past that stage to look more mature than you are is one of the most expensive mistakes utilities can make.
Sort of like how Kevin and I try and pretend we're more mature than we really are. Right? Like, there's nothing wrong with being where we are, is what
exactly. And the second misconception is that AMI is primarily a technological decision. It's really not. The playbook is very clear. This is a 15 to 20-year organizational transformation. And if your people, your processes, and your data governance aren't ready, all the technology in the world can't get you, where you want to go. And we've seen utilities invest tens of millions of dollars in hardware only to have the data just sit there because the back-end systems and the internal capacity to act on that data, aren't in place. And it can really be hampering. And then one more misconception is about AMR versus AMI. And a lot of utilities in the mid-tier, that mid-tier that we all, we're past the beginning, but we haven't reached the top per se, are asking, should we skip AMR and go straight to AMI? And the honest answer is, it depends on what problem you're actually trying to solve. AMR is still a perfectly valid and cost-effective solution in many contexts, especially where, two-way communication isn't yet a priority or it's not available. Just as a quick example, we worked with a small utility in Northern California. They wanted two things. They wanted to be able to have the operators be able to see all the meters. Sometimes they don't want to let that go. And then plus, they're in a mountainous area. So how many repeaters do you have to have for 2,000 connections? So
Sure, makes sense.
That's part of the misconceptions.
I mean, you had mentioned something there that I don't want to gloss over, and that is the fact that this entire process, the process that we have entitled, a digital transformation, it's really an organizational transformation, and it's going to take 15 to 20 years to do it right. So even if you're a municipality, utility out there that feels as if you're falling behind, rest assured you are not. As Richard just outlined, there are 4 different categorical phases of which, and you can fit into any of them and still not be behind. This is a long game. This is in no way, shape, or form a quick fix. This is going to be an evolution. There's going to be a transformation. It's going to take time. Everybody just relax. We got this. We got this covered in the Global Smart Metering Playbook, brought to you by the SWAN Forum. So the next question that I want to get to is, one of the key takeaways that I got from the playbook is that AMI success isn't about installation. It's about the data integration. And specifically, I'm curious, from the two of you going through this entire process, developing this playbook, what does success actually look like 2 or 3 years after deployment? Like if I was to put a time frame on it, I know it's a long game, but 2 to 3 years after deployment, what does it really look like? Who wants to take
so
that?
I'll jump on this.
Yeah.
I'll jump on this just and give an example, and then I'm sure Richard can kind of pull in from different client and partner projects and kind of weave in some of his own insights. But you said it kind of from the beginning about installation. That is where a lot of the challenges sometimes occur. But really, success 2 to 3 years out, 2 to 4 years out, it doesn't really matter, right? Let's say interval success or intermediate success. It's not really about just the meter uptime, but it's actually about whether that data for a specific purpose that you're looking to achieve through this is actually changing how utility fundamentally operates. That to me is, at least from reading over these different case studies and what we compiled and from the interviews that we had throughout this entire process, that's what really fundamentally makes a difference and doesn't turn into a complicated just technology that's just sitting there. So just for example, at Pace Water Systems in Florida, one of our SWAN utility members that kind of participated in this project that we had the chance to interview, Damon Batwell, the general manager, he actually gave me a really interesting example where smart metering, specifically post AMI deployment, really actually led to longer customer service calls, which you would think, wait, wouldn't that be shorter? No, it actually became longer, but in a positive way. It was actually more detailed because the staff was actually able to walk customers through their hourly usage patterns. So so that's actually, it was so surprising on the call. I was like, wouldn't you want the calls to be shorter?
Exactly.
No, it was it's a cultural operational shift that happened here.
Right.
And the customers from Pace Water Systems, at least again from this interview, right? I don't have the overall general statistics. It was very well received as a result of that. So it really showcased the shift in fundamentally how the customer service department and engagement was happening at the utility level. So that to me was just, again, an example. There's additional ones from utilities that we spoke with where high frequency data was actually used to detect water theft and leaks across departments. So really not looking, success is, let's say, AMI deployment that isn't impacting one isolated department, even though that could be what is they're looking after, but really it transcends across, the value transcends across multiple departments, IT, operations, customer service. They're actually able to pull from that data, making it even more cost effective and more beneficial, not only in the short term, but in the long term. And again, I can provide some more insights also in terms of the survey respondents and how they leveraged AMI for kind of success beyond the meter. But I don't know, maybe Richard, if you wanted to give an example or two about kind of that kind of short-term success, what that looks like.
I do want to hear, Richard, I do want to hear what you have to say about it, but I do want to point out, and I don't want to go too fast and gloss over one point that you made, Shirley, which is This is a cultural shift. This is by no means just a functional, plug and play, and all of a sudden you're doing something different. You're doing something digital that used to be analog, or something
Yeah.
of that matter. This is a change in the way you think. Because I was right there with you. Longer service calls? No, that's not what we're going for here. We're going for shorter. We're going for less. Actually, in effect, it's beneficial in that specific you gave with Pace. We're talking about being able to help constituents and customers of utilities be able to diagnose their own problems and fix it. More notice, more means of fixing an issue. There's all kinds of worlds of efficiency that it opens up. So this isn't just a plug and play. This is a cultural shift on every level. But I'm sorry, Richard, I just didn't want to gloss over that point that Shirley made. Richard, what do you have to add to that?
Not at all. And I mean, we have multiple instances of utilities where the customer service has grown, and even Molten Miguel, which went from 15% of customers using their online portal to 75%. And
Wow.
think about a utility that calls a person or lets them know through the app, hey, you've had continuous usage for 24 to 36 hours. And it could just be that, Johnny left the hose bib on in the backyard or something. It's not necessarily a leak.
Johnny's always causing problems,
Johnny.
by the way.
Johnny doesn't know. Johnny doesn't know. Johnny
No.
doesn't know.
He's a trouble child. Come
I've
on,
got
Johnny.
2
Enough.
kids and I bet something's on right now. But think about, like, hey, the customer's going to be glad about that because they're paying for that water.
Right.
And rather than it being on for 2 weeks and then the customer gets a big bill and then they call the water utility, utility says, well, hey, it's your bill, you left the water on. That there's not a good relationship there. But if a utility is calling, that's good. And then plus I would just add an operational piece. Successful utilities year 2 to 3 or maybe 4 to 5 are using, they're doing proactive maintenance. They're actually using data, and they could be using different, companies to predict when meters are failing before they fail. And they could use it to validate hydraulic models or to identify pressure zone anomalies before they become pipe bursts. There's all those little types of things that can really add to the success of the utility. It really helps.
Yeah, there's so many advantages with AMI, and I think we encourage all utilities to move in that direction. But the playbook isn't just all about sunshine and roses, right? Like it's a user guide and it's helpful hints for practitioners and would-be practitioners. So there is mention also of risks or downside, or at least what to watch out for as you deploy your AMI. So some of those risks, can you speak to what happens when your AMI isn't leveraged appropriately? What are the most common missed opportunities that utilities are missing, or even failures that you've seen in the field?
Oh, this is where we get the tea. This is where we get the good stuff. All right.
I'll start on.
Let's start talking.
Yeah, sure.
Also, but I'd say the number one failure, made, which documented, the playbook is pretty direct about this, is what we call like over specification and underutilization. A utility will go out and procure an AMI system with every bell and whistle available, right? And they're collecting data in 15-minute intervals, and they have pressure monitoring, they have temperature sensors, all of it. And then 2 years later, 80% of the data is just sitting in a server somewhere.
Right.
It's not analyzed. They're not doing anything with it, and they've incurred all the cost of collection without capturing the value.
Mhm.
And why does this happen? And usually because the data strategy wasn't built alongside the metering strategy. And they kind of go hand in hand. The playbook has a whole framework around this. You have to define your data governance, your integration architecture, your analytic, capabilities, and your use cases before you finalize your procurement specs. And it's very important. And if you don't, know what questions you're going to ask of the data, you can't really design the right system, to answer them. And I don't know, Shirley, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I can give some examples. For example, there was a utility. I'm actually not sure I'm allowed to mention the name, so we'll just say a utility,
A
a large
utility.
a large utility in the Northeast.
Okay, now we're getting more specific. What does it rhyme with?
Good?
Yes, what does it rhyme with? No, I'm just kidding. We don't.
Yeah,
We don't
no,
have to rhyme it. All right. Large
it's late
utility.
where I am right now. Let's
Large
skip that. But
utility
yeah,
in the Northeast. Got it.
yes, a large utility in the Northeast US had flagged to us incompatibility issues between essentially their AMI systems that they were really excited about, and then what they were using, which were existing kind of enterprise platforms that they had for billing and GIS. So there was challenges related to the synchronization of that data and reporting, again, leading to maybe angrier calls with customers, right? So that's just an example where maybe the technology itself on an AMI level worked, but the connectivity didn't. So it reminds me of, I could have the greatest iPhone, but if I have really bad connectivity service, it doesn't matter what phone I have, right? So that was just kind of something that stood out to us. But yeah, as Richard mentioned, kind of this is a big chapter, a big focus areas. And one thing I can mention from the past is looking at fail as we heard this from an institute in Netherlands of Institute for Brilliant Failures. There's a real organization out there. And they talk about an acronym FAIL as first attempt in learning. And I can't stress how impactful that's been for a lot of the work that SWAN does, is understanding we're not failures, right? But we're understanding, right, many times more from those missed opportunities, from those unexpected outcomes, from quote unquote failures in smart metering deployments. We can learn a lot from that. And that's part of this kind of knowledge sharing, is not only what worked well, but really lessons from the hard lessons learned. Yeah.
If you're not making mistakes, you're not trying.
Wow.
That's just gonna happen.
I'm feeling that for my parenting.
Yeah, right.
Fail. First attempt in learning.
Yeah, that's it.
First attempt in learning. Yeah,
Well,
I wish I made that up, but I didn't. Yeah.
It'd be the profound parent hour at the.
I'm okay being a mediocre. I'm a mediocre parent. I'm okay with that.
So we doubt that very much. I am curious which large municipality it is. Kevin, she mentioned that they were getting
Northeast.
Yeah, now Northeast, they're getting angry calls, and judging by like sports radio for Philly, New York, and Boston, it's gotta be one of those three.
Like we're all angry.
Yeah. I don't know which one it is.
You're not far. You're not far.
We don't have to get to the bottom of it, but all right, here we go. So I'm just gonna cut here real quick. We have 5 questions left with the final takeaway. We're gonna want to keep the answers within 3 minutes.
And you sort of asked this. Did you ask the culture question already? Do you think we need to go into it again?
Yeah, because I think some of the answers are going to go more into like the differences between leadership, operations, IT.
So maybe we won't do the alternate, because Richard and I could do all these questions. So maybe we just won't add for each one now.
Yeah. How about
whoever takes it. Yeah.
So
Okay, so you pick the next one, Shirley, and then we won't add to it because that really probably doubles the time.
Okay. That works.
Okay.
So Shirley, I'm going to be asking the next question. So if I'm asking the question, you answer. And if Kevin's asking the question, Richard,
Perfect.
We'll go on.
Perfect choice.
It's like a pickleball team.
There we go. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. I got the number 1 pick though. I got Shirley. So most of
Stop, go on. Stop, go on.
I'm happy to have Richard.
Here we go. All right. I was speaking that Shirley's the most athletic out of all 4 of us, not the fact that I wouldn't welcome Richard on the team.
It's true.
Yeah. So here we go.
Wait, sorry. Can we add some of these bloopers into the reel though? Is that going to be part of it?
Sure. Yeah, if we want. I mean,
if Richard approves. Yeah. Sorry. No, go for it. I don't want to.
We're closing credit.
No shame. No shame.
All right, here we go. For my pickleball partner, the question's coming up. Counting down. 3.
That's Gigi. Sorry, go ahead.
3, 2, 1. All right. So I've been thinking about this, and I've mentioned the word culture a couple of times in this conversation. So I want to dig a little deeper into that. So it's weird when you put culture and AMI together in the same conversation, much less the same question, but I'm going to try it anyway. So how much of AMI success is really a technology challenge, say, versus an organizational one or a cultural one inside of the utility?
Yeah, so Richard did allude to this earlier, but let's hone on this because it really is a critical question. It's pretty clear about this throughout the playbook. The organizational challenge is absolutely the harder one. We talk through the playbook about different considerations for AMI success across 4 different categories: people, processes, technology, data. how to address people and processes are addressed before the technology for a good reason. And I think one quote, Travis, that stands out to me related to this question actually comes from Raghu, formerly of Yarra Valley Water in Australia, who really helped to lead a lot of this playbook from the APAC perspective.
Yeah.
I think he captured it really well. He wrote to me as part of an interview, smart metering is a technology solution looking for a customer problem, and it actually should be driven by the customer. And so that really helped set the framework for a lot of the work we did with this playbook. We have a whole section also dedicated to change management. From different perspectives and really the reality about staff upskilling and alignment. So that's really holistically what came about throughout this playbook. It was pretty unanimous across the board from the different interviews as well that we conducted.
There's a lot of profound sayings and acronyms and good, valuable teaching lessons and learning opportunities coming out of the what led into this handbook. So, man,
awesome.
We're going to be uncovering all sorts of stuff in the final leg of this interview, Kevin.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you're going to find in the next question and the next question to answer, but I bet Richard's got something lined up.
Well, listen, I mean, the playbook is very impressive. And I'm curious, I'm thinking with insights from over 20 countries, which is crazy. And I'm mostly familiar with the U.S. market, right? And at least on the drinking water side, it's very fragmented, at least compared to Europe, and I really don't know elsewhere. So that's where my curiosity comes in. So with all those countries surveyed, what are some of the surprising differences or similarities in how utilities approach smart metering globally?
Well, and this is one of the most fascinating parts of putting the playbook together. And you might expect that the big differences are technological, different protocols, different network architectures. And those differences are real. In North America, fixed RF mesh networks have dominated. In Asia Pacific, you have the Internet of Things, really over cellular is the dominant trend. And in Europe, you see a lot of hybrid approaches, combining multiple protocols. And in parts of Australia, utilities are leaning heavily on, Internet of Things. You have the LoRaWAN existing telecom infrastructure because they simply don't want to own and operate their own radio networks. But the more surprising, finding is how much the differences are regulatory rather than technological. In Israel, for example, AMI deployment is entirely regulatory driven. So by law, all utilities are required to install AMI meters, and the contractor is responsible for everything from supply to installation to maintenance. That creates a different, procurement dynamic compared to, say, the United States, where utilities have much more latitude, but also, much more variability in approach and pace. And there's other examples. There's Spain. There's, you could look at all over, and it really is pretty different. And if you want to look at the similarities side, what's striking is how universal the cultural and organizational challenges are. Whether you're a small Australian, water authority or a large European utility or a mid-sized, American district, the story is the same. The hardest part isn't the technology; it's getting your people to trust the data and change the way they work. There's a utility in Ireland that had to go through a significant cultural transformation before their teams could act on the meter data without requiring costly field validation first. And, that same hesitancy, the instinct is to check in person, and rather than trust the signal. There's a big utility in the East that we're working with, that they're big.
Another angry Northeast utility.
But the biggest problem is the RF signals, and how the people, the customers they just do not want the RF signals there, which is so interesting because they're calling in on their cell phone and complaining about RF signals from a meter. And that's all I'll say about that. We could go on.
It's a little bit irrational. A little bit irrational.
That's got Philly all over it. Go ahead. You don't have to say it. We know.
Not Philly, not Philly.
It's not Philly, but it's not far. It's not far.
We know you, Philadelphia. We know you. Go ahead, Richard. What else?
No, that's good. That's all I have to say about that. I don't know.
All right.
Well, I'm sure Shirley has a lot to say, but I know we're only doing one at a time.
All right, here we go. So I want to talk. You had mentioned, both of you have talked about, both you, Richard, and you too, Shirley, have mentioned that this is a cultural shift. This isn't a plug and play. It's not going to be done overnight. But throughout this entire process, there are, gosh, what would you guess? 1,000 decisions that need to be made as you go through this process. Maybe 2,000, could be 1,000,000 for all I know.
I'm down.
Right. I mean, there's just a lot of questions in my mind. I'm all over the place because this is exciting
It's
stuff.
a lot to think through. Yeah.
Right. It's a lot to think through. Thank you, Kevin, for bringing me back to center.
Mhm.
So Kevin does a great job at bringing me back.
I didn't know how far you're going to go.
He's
2
got,
million.
he's got the leash. He's got the leash somewhere. Yeah.
Kevin's like, it's not an auction. All right. So, but I want to focus on the early stages. So for a utility that's just starting out, what's one decision early in the process that has the biggest long-term impact?
I think it was slightly said before, but we'll dive deeper, is
Okay.
defining your data strategy before you go on this exciting
Yeah.
but challenging technology procurement angle. That's almost like the easier step because there really are. There are a number of fantastic vendors,
Mm-hmm.
metering partners, kind of this hardware software alignment happening. So on that side, it's great that space is evolving fantastically. There's more cost-effective options. There's unique procurement models, business models to help make this more affordable. That's happening, which I'm excited to see. But that really is a secondary, even kind of third layer. It's really defining that data strategy before. So we listed this as one of those core takeaways from the playbook. So I'll kind of read this out, just this section of the development of a metered strategy should consider data security, privacy, data integration, data ownership, access, the frequency, the analytics, the insights, the compliance. Maybe near real time is sufficient versus real time. That might be sufficient if you're going from an outcome first lens and then working backwards on what data and at what pace and at what speed needs to be collected. Kind of just taking us back to that first question you asked of kind of some of the misconceptions is my success depends on the number of meters deployed. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It doesn't mean you might not even need more meters. So that's kind of just going back to that, kind of closing the loop here to help answer that question. So I really do think a lot of the utilities miss that first critical step and then get locked into some proprietary system that is not meant to be flexible. It's meant to lock you in, and that can absolutely impact your ability to actually work with that data.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, really, we said at the beginning, it's not about the data itself. It's about what you do with it, right? So defining what your data strategy is before you even go down this path is has to be like sort of the trap door there, right? It has to be like, let's make sure we do this at the onset. So that makes total sense.
Mm-hmm. And if I could, I'd like to look ahead a little from a technology standpoint and where it's going. And Travis, I'm going to do it.
Okay, go.
About every podcast we do, we kind of wonder and bet, like, sort of, when will AI come
Legally
into the
bet.
conversation?
Legally.
Right. When will AI be mentioned? We made it pretty far in,
We did.
but it's coming, and it affects every industry and just about every technology. I can't imagine it won't affect metering somehow. So as you look at the proliferation of AI, along with predictive analytics and digital twins, how do you see AMI evolving over the next 5 or 10 years, say?
Well, that's a great question. We're already seeing the leading edge of this in some of the utilities we profiled. And I could mention a few of them. Molten Miguel, for example, which is in Southern California. They're working with machine learning algorithms developed with data science partners to predict meter failure before it happens. I think we talked about that earlier. Flagging underperforming meters weeks before they actually fail, so that they can be proactively replaced rather than reactively responded to. And that's a preview of where the whole industry is heading. The playbook identifies what we call, agentic AI as one of the key emerging capabilities. The idea that AI doesn't just analyze data and surface um, and surface insights, for a human to act on, but actually takes routine decisions autonomously. And think about automated demand response, where where an AMI system is detecting a pressure anomaly, cross-referencing it with weather data, in your hydraulic model, and autonomously adjusting system operations. And that could be in the middle of the night. You just never know. All without a human, in the loop. And that's not science fiction. It's being prototyped right now. And you can look at digital twins. They're another frontier that's particularly exciting. When you integrate high frequency AMI data with a hydraulic model, of your distribution network, you can build a real-time digital twin of your entire system. And you can run scenario analysis. What happens to pressure zones if this main breaks? What's the demand forecast of the summer is 10% drier than average? Utilities like Molten like I mentioned, are already using virtual district metered areas, which is just, fascinating to me. We call them DMAs, to identify water loss hotspots by combining, smart meter data with pressure monitoring and acoustic sensors. And that, the digital twin is the logical evolution of that. So I don't know if Shirley, if you have anything to jump in on, but
Well, I'm actually going to.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I want to get right to the final takeaway. This is sort of like the headliner advice that we are going to give out here to the audience, free of charge. This is going to cost you nothing. We bring you nothing but expertise.
No paywall.
That's it. No paywall for the Water Online Show. This episode specifically because we are here to help. And so it's the SWAN Forum relating specifically to the Global Smart Metering Playbook. All right, Shirley. All right, Richard. Lightning round time. 3 sentences or less. If you had to distill the entire playbook into one piece of advice for utility leaders, what would it be? Both of you get a shot at that.
Pressure.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I'll try to make it catchy. Start with the why so you don't cry.
Yes. Love it. Bravo.
Wow.
Start with the why so you don't cry. That's it. You can write a song about that.
Mic drop. Mic
Really
drop.
well done. That's it, Richard.
Richard furiously writing, rhyming.
Well, I don't have that because I'm not that fast and I'm not that quick. But everything in the playbook, the technology selection, the procurement strategy, the data governance, the change management, everything that we put together, it flows from a clear answer to the question, why does your organization need to do this? And what specific problems are you trying to solve?
Mhm.
And you got to ask all that before you ever start.
Oh, I like that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ask the right questions before you even get started.
Absolutely.
Especially of yourself and your own utility. Man, oh man, that was a great conversation. And honestly, it is one that really hits the core of where the industry is right now, specifically talking about digital transformation and related to AMI in that space. Because if there's really one thing that's standing out to me about this conversation is that this is not a plug and play. And I know I said this before, but it's not a plug and play. This is a cultural shift. It's a shift in the way of thinking. It's a shift in the way you approach your job and your utility and your processes and systems every single day. So adoption happens when technology and operations and business really all align together. And that's where, in this case, SWAN comes in with the playbook that we have talked about. We made a link available to it. So please check it out, the Global Smart Metering Playbook. And that's exactly where Water Online comes in as well. Our goal, as well as SWAN's goal related to the Smart Metering Playbook and digital transformation, is to help bridge the gap between what's possible and what actually works in the field. So conversations like this, the playbook, everything that SWAN's doing from a digital transformation guidance point of view, all of it is meant to move the industry forward. So if you're a utility trying to navigate digital transformation or a technology provider trying to better serve the market, this is for you. this will work and help you get where you need to be. As always, thanks for listening to the Water Online Show. I want to thank Richard and Shirley for joining us. Thank you both. A lot of good information there. Couldn't thank you enough for spending the time here with us on the Water Online Show.
Yes.
Enjoy
Thanks
it.
for having us. It's a pleasure.
If you found this episode valuable, and I'm sure you did, be sure to subscribe and share with a colleague and smash that like button. Stay connected with us at Water Online. Until next time, keep pushing the industry forward.